I can't think of a more fitting time to revisit a film that came out over 8 years ago. I watched this a few years ago, but I've rewatched it yesterday because I thought it's a very fitting movie to talk about. Usually I wouldn't really go back, I think, to review movies that are 8 years old, but maybe we'll do a bit of a review and also a bit of a how similar is some of the effects on society is the Contagion virus to the Peroni pandemic. Now this movie is honestly an all-star cast. Matt Damon, Jude Law, Lawrence Fishburne, Kate Winslet, Bryan Cranston, you name it, they're all in it. And in terms of the actual performances, of course it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And they do a fantastic job of getting you in the situation of feeling like when it came out 8 years ago, or when I saw it a few years ago, that it was really happening. They did a fantastic job, and that's a tall order. To create a pandemic movie or a disaster film and really make it feel like it's extremely possible and plausible that this is able to happen and is happening. And now, when we sit here in the current situation that we're in, it's quite incredible to see so many similarities and to see some things happen quite early in the movie, and you're like, okay, that's already happening. And then as the movie goes on, you start seeing crazier and crazier territory. But just to give you a rough understanding of what happens in this movie, Patient Zero, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, is a single person carrying this virus, and over literally 12 days, it already gets to like 80 million people. A lot faster than what's actually happening now, but it really tries to show you how one virus in Patient Zero can spread globally and so quickly. Now, this is an 8-year-old movie, as I said. So a lot of people might have already seen it. Or they've seen YouTube clips of it, they've heard about it, they might have seen the ending or whatever. So I don't know if I really want to do a review type, but more of a discussion of this movie. Because there are a lot of similarities. But I'm not going to make this video to try and add to the panic. The main reason I think it's important to talk about this movie and potentially see it is to show that the virus, of course, can be very deadly and disruptive to society, but by far, the main message, I think, of Contagion is to show that there is another virus that can be even more contagious and can spread even more rapidly. And that is fear and panic. This movie does show a lot of panic buying, but I think the main thing that this movie is trying to show is that the deadliness of a virus can be equally matched by the deadliness of a society just erupting into panic. I think it's a tall order to try and manage the reality of releasing facts, and the moment you release facts, it is always going to be matched by fear. And this movie does a great job of trying to show the internal discussions within government, very intimate scenes, talking about the virus, but also talking about how they want to respond and how they want to try and get the message out to the public. And it's a great insight to potentially how the governments at the moment are trying to manage this crisis. So when I sat down to watch this movie again, I was kind of doing it to be like, oh, well, this feels like a very current event. I've seen this before, and from memory, a lot of things are lining up. But when I finished the entire film again, I was like, well, there is something to be said here, and I want to make this clear. I do not want to make videos that feed into the fear. I think it's really important for people to tune in for this, because it does give them a very clear understanding of when there is a pandemic that occurs, there are two potential viruses that are spreading. Yes, the virus itself and the virus of fear and panic. And the fear and panic one is something that can be controlled a lot more individually than the actual virus can be controlled sometimes. We're all trying our best, of course, to minimize the amount of exposure, social distancing, which also you can see in this film. There is mention of social distancing and banning handshakes and completely changing the normal behavior that we all know and think is, of course, normal. This movie does show that society tries to completely change its behavior to combat this. But the one thing I think the movie also showed is there's a lot of behavior changes in this movie, but there's not a lot of psychological changes in terms of people trying to get a handle on the panic, get a handle on the fear. It really shows that there's a physical response to this, but in terms of psychologically, the whole of society kind of falls to its knees. And if only the same psychological measures were tried to be put into place as much as the physical measures, I wonder if we would have got a different movie. Interesting idea. And I think also, if you have the stomach for this particular type of film, it is a fantastic film, and I can't think of a better film to potentially tune into right now to get potentially a better perspective of how to combat this psychologically. We have seen other movies like this in the mid-90s, like Outbreak, starring Dustin Hoffman and Kevin Spacey, and that's a fantastic movie too, but this one just seems like it's resonating so much at the moment with what's currently going on. So I do actually think that you should watch this. This review is to say, yes, this is a fantastic film. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the acting and this and that, but really about the similarities there that you will find in this, and how that after I watched it, it did give me a slightly different perspective in terms of, yes, we are dealing with a virus, but also the virus of fear can be potentially managed if you physically and psychologically recalibrate in this very different world that we might be living in the next couple of weeks or even couple of months. Who knows? But that's pretty much it today. I just think, yes, definitely worth watching. All-star cast, fantastic job, and more than just a good film to watch right now, but I think it'll give you a lot of insight into potentially how to deal with this situation in terms of psychological. But guys, I'll be back next week with some more reviews. Everything's delayed. I'll have to try and find something that I really want to watch and actually want to talk about, which, you know what, there's so many things to talk about, so I will find something. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and I'll be back with you next week. See you later.